Thank you very much, Dominique, leader of the opposition, my former boss, Kamala Prasad-Bissessar.
The best boss!
The best boss. I was going to say that, you preempted me. Members of Parliament, candidates, distinguished members of this party, Jack Warner, Selvin Kudrow, my sometimes walking partner in Eddie Hard Ground. And if I forget anybody, please forgive me, but it's such a great experience and a great crowd. Before I start, I just wanted to observe that there's a term in geology called the triple junction. Triple junction is a geological feature, and there are not many of them in the world. It's where three tectonic plates meet. It's called a triple junction. And when I came in here, I was talking to Khadija, and we were discussing Currab Junction. Currab Junction is the meeting point of three political tectonic plates. St. Joseph, Tunapuna, and St. Augustine all converge at Currab Junction. So we are at a very special place in Trinidad and Tobago. And before I get carried away with my speech, because I'll get carried away, I want to talk a bit about our political leader. And I want to give you my summary, quick summary, I know we don't have much time, about my experience with her as my boss from 2010 to 2015. And three observations. One, she's one of the strongest people I've ever met, right? And I'm not talking about physical strength, talking about emotional and mental, intellectual strength. The second observation is when I was Minister of Energy from 2011 to 2015, not one day did she interfere with the Ministry of Energy or any state enterprise. Not one day. In fact, I used to have to go to her and ask for advice. And I used to get pretty good, wise advice. And the third observation is that I, more than any minister in that 5-year period, traveled the entire world. India, China, England, and so on. And she was a great ambassador for this country. And represented our country with distinction. So before I get carried away with Stuart Young and others in the PNM, I'd have to say that. So, brothers and sisters, I thank the party for inviting me to share some thoughts tonight. The state of the economy is one of two huge issues in this election. The other is crime. The two issues are interrelated. A weak economy fuels crime, and crime weakens an economy. It's a vicious cycle from which we in this country must quickly escape. And you'll see the reference to the words speed and quick many times in this speech, because we don't have time. The Rowley Young government has presided over the worst contraction in this country's economy since the 1980s. Under their watch, the economy has contracted, as Dave said, by about 20%. And there's been a loss of economic confidence to the extent that our largest private sector companies, I'm not calling names, read the papers, you'll see what we're talking about. They are investing heavily outside of this country in CARICOM and in the United States. IMF data indicate that Trinidad and Tobago's economy is the 7th worst performing economy in the world for the period 2016 to 2024. I got that from a friend at the university. I wouldn't call his name because he might end up like Dr. Joel Tilak Singh, right? So, 7th worst performing economy in the world. So I, being naturally curious, I wanted to find out who is ahead of us. Number 1, Venezuela. Number 2, South Sudan. Number 3, Yemen. I think the United States was planning to bomb them recently. Sudan, right, which is different from South Sudan. Equatorial Guinea, Lebanon. And number 7, Trinidad and Tobago. And right behind Trinidad and Tobago at number 8 is Ukraine, country which for the last 3 years has been bombarded by Russia. So what all these other countries have in common with us? These are all countries with war, civil strife, and so on, and we are part of that group of countries. And this is because I know that people on the other side might have a press conference tomorrow. This is IMF data, not my data. The economic malaise is also frustrating thousands of our bright young people who can't find jobs. Many have left. Many will contemplate migration after the 28th of April. Our loss of economic strength means our country is losing not only its young, bright people, but our leadership role and prestige in the Caribbean. The UK government slapped a visa requirement on this country. At the heart of that decline is a massive 31% decline in the energy sector since 2015, which is because of huge declines in gas and oil production. Those declines have led, and we all know, to plant closure, job losses, and closure of companies. The evidence is overwhelming. In 2015, when we left office, there were 20,500 people working in the energy sector. In 2024, that number has come down to 12,500. In 2015, this country exported 231 LNG cargoes. I used to move my blinds in my office and look out in the Gulf of Paria and marvel at the LNG tankers moving up and down the Gulf of Paria. In fact, somebody said on my Facebook post that page that there used to be a little traffic jam for LNG tankers coming in and out of Point Fortin. 231 has become 131 in 2024. So if you want to know what caused the Forex drought, look no further. The issues with the shortage of US dollars to the public, and I see all of a sudden this small man is important, right? Because I see somebody, Prime Minister, saying we have to focus on the small man getting Forex. The issues with foreign exchange supply to the public is not going to get better. It is going to get worse. Our foreign reserves, and Dave gave some numbers, our foreign reserves when we left office was 10.5 billion. And today, as of February 2025, that is 5.3 billion. So, and that 5.3 billion would have been worse. It might be closer to zero. Because if it were not for foreign borrowing, so when they borrow US dollars internationally, they put it in the central bank, and they put that borrowed US dollars in the foreign reserves, and they give the Ministry of Finance TT dollars. So it would have been worse if they were not borrowing internationally and drawing down on the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. So meanwhile, our foreign debt has doubled since we left office. Our foreign debt is now 5.6 billion US dollars. What that means is that our foreign debt now exceeds our foreign reserves. And the only thing standing between this country and the economic abyss is the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. So that Forex shortage is a direct consequence of lower gas and oil production, petrochemical production, which is a direct consequence of a collapse in drilling activity since 2015. Drilling activity is down by about 55%. Less drilling means less production. It's either you, as Trump would say, drill, baby, drill, or you pack up and you go home. Our political leader has over the years advocated for significant reforms to the fiscal regime for oil and gas drilling and the removal of bureaucratic obstacles. I agree with her. We need to wake up the energy sector and the economy, and we need to do that quickly. Our country is facing difficult years ahead because of this natural gas production issue. And strangely, from today, and probably until the 20th of April, you'll see all sorts of announcements about gas discoveries and gas projects and so on, right? So, very coincidental announcements. The political leaders said so many years ago that we will be facing difficult times. Last year, Keith Rowley and Colin Burt said the same thing. They said that 25 to 27, you remember that? They said 25 to 27 would be difficult years. So, we said that long time. We saw that coming. So, the central political issue, one of the central political issues in this election is this issue of the Dragon Project. This has been touted as one of the great achievements of the Rowley-Young decade, or the lost decade, as some call it. The former Prime Minister likened the Dragon deal to the Golden Fleece. Those of you all who did literature in high school remember the Golden Fleece. He afforded great primacy to this deal and went so far to say if it didn't happen, we cuckoo cooked. You remember that? Cuckoo cooked. There were suggestions that the government, the current government, had put all its eggs in the Venezuela basket, and that was a risky strategy. To get this Dragon deal and to overcome hurdles of U.S. sanctions, they courted a group of Democratic congressmen in Washington. However, something happened on the 5th of November, 2024 in the United States. Things changed radically, and the Democrats were washed out of power. That is why, when they launched their candidates in Woodford Square 2 weeks ago, I heard reference to a Republican lawmaker, that they met a Republican lawmaker, and they didn't say who it was. But all of a sudden, we hear that they're meeting Republican lawmakers and so on. As far as I'm aware, they were only meeting with Democratic congressmen. President Trump and his Secretary of State. What Trump go do we? Remember that? What Trump go do we? Well, we've been seeing a bit of what Trump could do we in recent messages on Truth Social and on Twitter. President Trump and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, as was expected, have applied more pressure on Venezuela, making the quest to get Venezuelan natural gas into this country more complex and more uncertain. Brothers and sisters, and I'm sure the political leader will agree, this country cannot plan its economic future on the hopes of getting Dragon gas. We cannot. These hopes rise and fall on the ebb and flow of geopolitical currents. You just cannot plan this country's future on this. The United States is a great nation and a great friend of Trinidad and Tobago. They represent 34% of our exports, and they are the home to our largest diaspora. If Dragon happens one day and it's done properly, then great. But we must look within and develop our own resources, our own deep water hydrocarbon resources, which Mrs. Prasad Bissesa's government unlocked from 2010 to 2025. And we left that deep water baton on the desk for the PNM to run with it. But they either failed to run with it or they started to run with it recently pretty slowly. So what is the way forward? The way forward is to resuscitate the energy sector as quickly as possible. We don't have time. The way forward is to make the best use of idle assets in this country and make them generate forex as soon as possible. This includes idle oil-bearing acreage under the control of Heritage Petroleum and the refinery, which has now been closed for going on 7 years. The refinery is part of what our political leader recently described as an emerging rust belt from Point Lisa to Point Apia to Point Fortin. It is part of the deindustrialization of Trinidad and Tobago over the last 10 years, which has to be reversed. The way forward is to make it easier, and our leader has spoken about this, make it easier for people to do business in this country. The way forward is to accelerate our deep water gas assets, bring them into production. The way forward is to reduce taxation, and the party has spoken to that. Reduce taxation on companies in the non-energy sector and get them to be excited about Trinidad and Tobago again. And the way forward is to align this country to the economic expansion in Guyana and Suriname. The way forward is to diversify this economy, and the former Prime Minister said diversification is an annoying word. The way forward is to diversify into the maritime sector. And the way forward is to excite the private sector to unlock the great creativity of our people. The PNM has not done these things in the last 10 years. That is why, and they will not do it from 2025 to 2030. If they did not do it in the last 10 years, and David, they had 3,489 days as of today. I went and checked that, right? There's a little function in Excel you could use to do that, right? 3,489 days they have had in government. It is the longest continuous stint in government since Eric Williams was in government. Longest continuous. Patrick Manning had 2 stints in government, right? They were not continuous. 91 to 95 and 2001 to 2010. But it is the longest continuous stint, and they haven't done it. And I don't think they will do it anytime soon. So we have a duty, and we stand at what I call the triple junction. And I want to endorse my brother Devish Maharaj for St. Joseph, right? And to all my friends listening in St. Joseph, and I have many friends listening in St. Joseph, do not split your vote. Vote for Devish. He's a brilliant attorney. He's one of the best. They refer to him as a prominent Port of Spain attorney. I still don't understand why they have to say prominent Port of Spain attorney, but he's a prominent attorney. And vote for our sister, Khadija. We know she will win this seat handsomely, right? And let us bring Mrs. Prasad Bissessa back into Whitehall. Well, we weren't in Whitehall before, but put her into Whitehall, because we cannot afford 5 more years of everything I just spoke about. Thank you very much.